The Tuftonboro Association has been holding Candidates Night for at least 30 years, and I think it goes back a lot longer than that. And the association, although we formed back in the 1960s, thank you, in order to help promote zoning in the town of Tuftonboro, we've grown and we've done many other items. And key among them have been working with the Conservation Commission. And the latest effort on the Conservation Commission has been the Great Meadow. And I don't know how many of you have been walking out to see all the work that's been done, but we will be commissioning, or the Tuftonboro Conservation Commission will be commissioning the Great Meadow effort in this spring. The date hasn't been settled yet, but I please urge you to come on out. It's extraordinary to see the walkway, the bridge, and then the viewing platform that's been erected. And again, I appreciate you being here. Tonight is going to be a discussion. It is not a debate. And so while there will be questions that will be solicited from the floor, we're not going to get into people throwing stones at one another. We're hoping that candidates will identify exactly why they're running for the office they're running, and then answer some questions from you, explaining what their goals will be. And I'm not going to go into the detail about the process or procedure, because I'm going to leave that up to our moderator, Mr. Steve Brinzer. And we have all slightly altered if you remember the last Candidates Night, we've altered the procedure a little, but again, I'll be letting Steve explain that. I'd like to thank everybody again for showing up. I'm glad the roads were clear and that we don't expect too much tonight or tomorrow. Even though it seems that in the last couple of weeks, winter finally hit. I don't know where it was in January or December, but at least it's here now. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to our tonight's moderator, Steve Brinzer.
Thank you, Mark. You're welcome. Max left to hold this.
It'll help.
I want to acknowledge that Max Ladeau has volunteered to record this evening's program. We appreciate his efforts to do that. Before we get started, I'd like to ask if you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is in the corner of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to keep this evening's program fairly informal. I have just a couple of key points. As Mark mentioned, it's a forum, not a debate. It's an opportunity for you in the audience to learn more about each candidate. The candidates will share a little bit about themselves, their thoughts on the direction of the town, and why they want to be elected, or in many cases, re-elected. After that, candidates in contested races will both answer questions from the audience. This is the part that's a little different from prior years. The board has asked that we allow each of the candidates in a contested race to speak, to give their spiel, and then after they've both spoken, it's your opportunity to ask questions, which the same question will be answered by both of the candidates. So that's a little different twist on the way we've done it in the past. In order to maintain order, I'm going to call on members of the audience with questions. And just like when you were in school, if you just put your hand up so I know we're not going to be talking over each other, that helps me a lot. When asking a question, please tell us your name and where you live in town. And in fairness to the candidates and to the audience, I'd like to limit the total time for question and answers to about 10 minutes for each session. I don't know if it'll go that long or not. We'll see. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Since we have, for school board, we have one contested race, and I thought I would start with that race this evening. It's for member at large, and of the two candidates, one of them is traveling, and so Chris Baca will not be here tonight, but Mary is here, and so I'm going to ask her simply just to stand where you are is fine, and tell us a little bit about who you are and why you'd like to be elected to this position.
So I was raised in Jacksonville, so I'm going to stand over here in this corner.
Max tells me each of us has to hold that so that we get the recording.
Thank you.
But you don't need to hold it to your mouth, just the way you're holding it is fine.
So as a courtesy also to you, I am going to read from my paper, but I know what I have to say, and I'm glad to answer any questions as well. First of all, thank you, townspeople of Tuftonboro, and the moderator. This is the first time I've been in this room, I think. I have been in the library, of course. So my name is Shilleref, and sometimes people will look at me and have kind of a quizzical look. So when that happens, I just say, well, I'm Ruth's daughter. And that sometimes works even more so. My mom, Ruth Shilleref, will be 100 years old on Friday. She's predictably physically frail, but her mind is still quite sharp. I'm running because my roots are here, starting with the Goldthwaits back in the late 1800s. I chose to put Prey in my the form because I'm very proud of that middle name. I was named after my great-grandmother, Mary Adeline Prey. She was the daughter of a Goldthwaite. She married a Lang, and her daughter married a Porter, and that Porter married a Shilleref. So Shilleref kind of took all the English out of everything. That's my dad, who's first generation American. His roots are being German. He was born in America, of course. So because of my father's work, we moved a lot, about every 4 years. I went to 3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 3 high schools. Because of my father's work in development after World War II, he had hoped to go back to college where he'd gotten a full scholarship. Everybody encouraged him, just go to work, go to work, go to work. And his work was such that we moved a bunch, but we always came back to Wolfboro in the summer to spend the summer with my grandparents. Of course, we were barefoot and usually blue-lipped from being in the water too long. So my extended family has been here since the 20s, and that would be the 1920s. And that's when my grandfather built the summer camp, which we actually live in now. And most of the windows don't open, so don't think fancy beachfront property. You know, where you drop something and it rolls all the way across the floor. I'm running because of my experience as a public school teacher. My degree is in sociology. I'm licensed in grades 4 through 9, as well as academically and intellectually gifted education. But I also have a master's degree in education. But most of my career, I taught 5th grade. I did teach 3rd grade. I did not belong in 3rd grade. I made them cry. I didn't know what I did, but they just seemed to cry. 5th graders don't cry as much. That career was in Asheville, North Carolina, because that's where we last were, and there's 6 of us, so we tended to be kind of sprinkled up and down the East Coast as everybody graduated. I don't want to go on too long here, but so that career was with Asheville City Schools. Every summer I came back to New Hampshire. I saved my pennies and whatever it took so that I could come back to New Hampshire. The experience that I've had with Asheville City Schools was in a school of math, science, and technology. We are also in a year-round school for a little bit. That was a good idea, but it was hard to get the support for the longevity of that. And a NASA Explorer School. I completed my career as an academically and intellectually gifted education specialist, K-12, for that school district. With the NASA Explorer School program, which was a very competitive grant application, it took a lot of collaboration among teachers to apply for that grant. It's very competitive. Only 50 schools across the nation at the time were selected for that. And that allowed us to connect with engineers, all the work involved with NASA, particularly the science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, which you hear a lot called STEM, but it's really STEAM because there's an A in there, and that's the arts. And I don't mean just painting. Those arts that are applied as well. So arts and engineering, arts and science. One day a student came up to me and said, Ms. Schiller, I'm not really into this NASA thing, because I don't want to be an astronaut. And so I said, you don't have to be an astronaut. As you may know, there are very few that make that cut or can fit into the suit even. But we explored and expressed the opportunities that they had through this connection in the required curriculum to the STEM lessons, that there are there's 30,000 spin-off technologies, many of whom are in, is that my timing? Many of whom are, of which are right here in New Hampshire. I found out recently, micro machining in Claremont, miniaturized vacuum pumps in Hanover, and also not necessarily in New Hampshire, the cochlear implants, because one of the NASA engineers had hearing issues from birth. And so his capacity in that field to help him be able to connect. But content isn't the only thing. I'm super big about process, the thinking skills, the problem solving, how you take something apart. Like my brother Peter, when he was a little kid, was constantly taking things apart. And if either you personally have experienced this or your children, putting it back together again was not necessarily a requirement. And there's always extra parts, right? So, pardon me? I am out of time. So, but I will say, sorry, I didn't know the time limit. Everywhere I go, it's either more or less.
Yeah, I said I had 5 minutes, and we're past that, so.
Could I close by saying, though?
You may, I'll take all of this.
Yeah. Well, as family's super important. My dad also, T. John, said integrity was important. I definitely will put principles over personality. And I could say so much more. Any questions you have, welcome to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks. Just the way of clarification, on the ballot that you'll get on town election day for the school board, there's only one candidate or one contested race. I've highlighted it in yellow. It's 2 pages. The second page is where you get to vote all the money. So anyway, that's by way of explanation. Moving on to the town election now. I'm going to work in reverse order of the ballot, which you'll have again next one for election day. And so that would be Paul Matlock for our library trustee. I'm working from the bottom up.
Oh, yeah, I would say you are. So I'll keep it short. Yeah, I love libraries. I'm happy to serve as your library trustee again. We have this wonderful new library here. I hope you've all seen it before. We have a friendly, helpful staff, and we always are looking for new ideas or ways that we could serve the community better. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. By the way, this is sort of like in church when you come in late, the places that are open are in front. Thank you. Okay. I don't know this lady. Alana, are you? Okay, great. And she's running for trustee of the cemeteries. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Alana Albee, the sister of Chip, just so I clear that up. I'm not his wife. And
Thank God.
thank God. Do those things happen around here? I live on 140 Ledge Hill Road. I think we're supposed to identify ourselves. I was born and raised in Wolfboro. I went overseas for about 35 years. I'm now retired. Some of you will have seen my name in the Tuftonboro Times in relation to the Libby Museum. I've been heavily involved in that and raising the millions for its restoration. So I signed up to be on the cemetery committee for one reason, really, and that's to continue on the great work that's been done before and by all those that have served on the cemetery committee. I think Tuftonboro cemeteries are wonderful. I have many relatives that have been buried in different cemeteries around town, so I'd just like to help out. That's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. The next uncontested position is for trustee of the trust funds. And Peter, I don't see him here this evening.
Pete's not here.
Sorry?
Pete's not here.
Okay, I didn't think so. For Budget Committee for 1 year, again, Brendan, and I'm going to say Gothran, I don't know. Godwin, okay. And he is unfortunately traveling, but bear with me just a second. He did send to me a brief statement, which I will read. My name is Brendan, and my reason for running for Budget Committee is our way of giving back to the community my wife and daughter and I love so much. This opportunity seems a good fit given my aptitude for numbers and analysis. I hold a BS in molecular cell biology from the University of Connecticut and an MBA from Bentley University. I have budgeting responsibilities for multiple companies over the past 25 years in the private sector, including 2 Fortune 500 companies and 2 companies that I own currently. I also see this position as a great way to acquaint myself with our Tuftonboro neighbors and support the activities that make this the town we like to call home. I hope you will consider me for this position. Thanks for your attention. Now, he's running for a position, there is no other opposition, so should be good. Moving on to Budget Committee for 3 years, we have 2, again, these are positions that are not contested, but we might as well start out with Gary since he's alphabetically the last guy on the list. If you'll stand up and tell us why you're running and why you'd like to be reelected. And I guess you have to hold that recorded.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Gary Shahames. I've lived here since, we've owned our home since 1992, and I've lived here as a resident since 2020. I've served on the Budget Committee once before, around 2010, and I'm just finishing a 3-year term now. I was always attracted to running to the Budget Committee because I felt that if there was anything I could do for the community, that would be where I could probably do the most. I came from a large school down in New Jersey. We operated on a yearly budget. We had a large endowment, which might be somewhat analogous to all the lakeshore properties that we have and the tax base and that sort of thing. And we had the same sort of considerations that we have here in the town, which is basically setting priorities and trying to determine what's a fair and reasonable budget for the taxpayers. The Budget Committee itself is comprised of some very talented people. I've had the pleasure this past year of working with 3 newer people. I found them to be very introspective and very very helpful. I'm looking forward to working again with them next year. In terms of where I'd like to see the town go, I think the town is right where it should be. We need to obviously make sure we continue to provide services to the residents. We want our taxes and tax rates to be as moderate and as stable as possible. And we have to keep up with the new people coming in. There's a lot of new building permits. And so I think the budgeting process has to be done, accurately and with foresight for that type of growth. I want to say that the budget process that we have is a good one. It's a little mixture of old school and new stuff. The selectmen do a very good job at bringing line items to us. We look at them, we ask questions. I'm very pleased with what we've done this year, although I'm of course taken back by the increase that we're going to be looking at, but you know what that was caused by, so that's where we are. Okay, if you'll like to vote for me, I'd be happy to do another 3 years. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay.
The other candidate that we have for Budget Committee, again, running unopposed, is Dave Dauphiné. But Dave, if you'll give us a few minutes to tell us why you want to run. And
I'll give you the quick. So my name's Dave Dauphiné. Some of you might know me because my wife and I recently bought the general store in town in 2021. Others of you might know that I'm a ballroom dance instructor in town. But serving on the committee is something that I've had the honor of doing already this year. I did so because I was asked, somebody had to step down, and I filled in that spot. Gary did a great job of giving the state of things as the budget committee. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because you really did do a great job with that. But suffice it to say, the way that I look at things with regard to the budget committee is there are 3 things that happen. There are the needs, there are the wants, and there are the nice to haves. The needs are a little easier to pick out, and I think we do a really good job as a committee getting to those needs and making sure that they're met. And then there's the wants and the nice to haves, and those are the more difficult ones. And our job is to make sure that we have the needs met and the wants and the nice to haves are appropriate, if you will. This town does a great job with its budget. I think we're very prudent in handling our money, and I'd like to continue to keep it going that way. I'm generally a fiscal conservative. Just means that I don't frivolously like to spend money. I don't do it with my own budget. I'm not going to do it with your money and with mine because I am a taxpayer too. So you'll see me on the ballot. I hope you'll put a little check mark for me.
Thank you, Dave. Again, working my way up the town ballot, we have road ager for 3 years. Jim Bean is the first. I don't see Jim here this evening. So moving on, Frank, and I don't know. Trinica. Yeah, apparently neither one of them are here. Okay. Moving right along. Supervisor of the checklist for 3 years. This has presently nobody has come forward in the allotted time frame to sign up for this position. However, there is someone who has put his hand up and said he would like to entertain your vote on a write-in basis, and that's Dan Bernard. And I'm going to give Dan the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Well, as the moderator said, my name is Dan Barnard, and I'm here to ask for your vote for the open position of Supervisor of the Checklist. Many of you know that I served for 20 years as town moderator, and during that period, especially the last 3 years, I've become absolutely convinced that New Hampshire has the most secure, time-tested, and inclusive voting system in the nation. I think we are a model for other states to follow. Former Secretary Bill Gardner, present Secretary David Scanlon have worked to establish a system that works well and includes everybody, and I'm very proud of having been a part of that. Now, the supervisors of the checklist are a very important part of that whole process because they maintain the list of registered voters. They review the applications for people who want to become a registered voter, and they do their best to maintain the list and keep it current in terms of people who are moving into town or are leaving town under any other circumstances. For myself, I would say my wife and I are full-time residents of the town of Tuftonboro, and we have been full-time residents for 47 years. In addition to my time as moderator, I've been the editor of the Tuftonboro Times since 2014. Thank you for that plug, Alana, by the way. And since 2014, Cindy and I raised two sons in this town. We are here summer and winter, and I would appreciate your write-in vote for Supervisor of the Checklist. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, we're finally getting to a race where there are actually two candidates and they're both here. So, and again, working my way up the ballot. So this is for a tax collector for 3 years, and Jackie Rollins will be the first. I'm going to ask Jackie if you'll come up front, because when you're done and when Chris is done, I'll open the floor up to questions, which for both of you.
I'm Jackie Rollins. I've been tax collector for many years in Tuftonboro. I'm a lifelong resident of Tuftonboro. Can you hear me, Max? I love Tuftonboro. I love my job, and I hope you'll continue to support me. Thank you.
You're stealing my life.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
I'm standing next to Jackie. We do like each other, okay? I'm Chris Sawyer. I live on Federal Corner Road. I've been here 33 years, raised my kids here. I started out on the Parks and Rec Department, moved up to the Planning Board. Now I'm on the Trustee of the Trust Funds. I just want to continue to serve the town. I love it here. I know many of you know who I am. It's not a competition here. It's just, given the opportunity, if not this time, next time, I'd like to be next in line for tax collector. I'm an accountant by trade. I have my own business. I can definitely make time for it. I have the aptitude. I think I could do the job with no issues. And like I said, it's going to be up to the voters, and if you choose to vote for me, I'll be happy to serve.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, this is the part we're going to do a little differently. So I'm opening the floor up to questions, and the question you ask, we'll ask both of the candidates to answer. And I'll do it by, again, I guess by reverse. So Jackie, whoever asks the question, hopefully there is a question.
Hopefully not.
Jackie will be the first to respond. So don't be bashful. Somebody has a question.
Thank you.
Okay, that was moving right along, the familiar face, town clerk for 3 years, Dan Colbert.
I did have notes, but I probably can figure this out. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Coulter, town clerk here in Tuftonboro. I lived in Tuftonboro for 28 years as of April 25th. We've raised 3 daughters here in this town through Governor Wentworth School District and 1 Brewster Academy. I love it here. It's a wonderful town. I was hired as the deputy town clerk in December of 2019, and deputy tax collector by Heather Kubadu and Jackie Rollins. Heather did know that she was going to be leaving at some point within that year, and so I knew going in that she would be leaving, and hopefully I would be appointed when she left. And then I was in August of 2020. Certainly gave me lots of experience running an election, because 2 weeks later was the September primary and then the November 2020 general election. So learned quite a lot right then. So I was appointed. I then had to run to finish out her term. So that was in March of 2021. So I finished that. So now it's 2023, and now I'm running for the 3-year town clerk term. Trying to think what else. Along with elections, there's also motor vehicle registration, vital records, dog licensing, just general knowledge about the town. I thought I knew a lot of people before I started. Now I feel like I really know a lot of people in town, but I think it's important to be efficient, and obviously you have to follow all the rules and regulations when you're the town clerk, but I also feel like I have come from a hospitality background. I think it's important to be kind, efficient, and courteous to our fellow townspeople. So I certainly look forward to serving you again, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
All right, last but not least, we have the Selectman for 3 years. And again, working my way up the ballot, I'm going to ask Chip to talk first.
Keep it to 5 minutes.
Yeah, whatever. 5's good.
My name's Chip Albee. I've been your selectman for the last 6 years. I was a selectman in the early 2000s and also a county commissioner in 2008, I think it was. I guess if I boil down what it is why I run for selectman and why I like to serve as selectman, is that I really enjoy living in Tuftonboro, and I want to keep it as much the same as I can. And that includes guaranteeing access for people that don't live on the lakes to have access to the lakes, to take care of the assets that the town has. We're going to be doing Union Wharf this summer. We're going to hopefully get a police station going here after this next town meeting. We've got a number of projects in the works. I had considered maybe not running, but after this past season's budget committee meetings, it dawned on me that it really takes a lot more work than our current Board of Selectmen, the other members, are ready for, I think. And another year of on-the-job training, I think, is going to be good for everybody. But having served as a selectman's representative on the budget committee for the last 6 years, it takes a lot of negotiations, it takes a lot of interpersonal work, but it also takes the strength of purpose that the selectmen need to present their budget. And contrary to Gary's dire warnings about this budget, we are below the rate of inflation that was going on in 2023. So I'm pretty happy about that. I think the reevaluation went well. There's always going to be some abatements that are going to be needed or asked for, but the tax rate is low, and we've kept it low, and we're going to continue to keep it low, and that takes an awful lot of effort and a lot of planning. And also, we need to try to avoid, in my mind, adding to the clerical budget in the form of a town manager. I think the 3 selectmen managing this town with a $4 million budget is plenty. I think it's a good mix, and executive decisions made at the public meetings is the best way to do them. Once you bring a town manager on board, now you have a lot of decision-making that's going on behind the scenes. So I'd like to have you vote. I know, having been in politics a while, I'll never get some of your votes, but I'm hoping to get as many as I possibly can. Thanks. Are we gonna, should I stay around for questions?
You can talk longer if you like.
No, I'm good.
All right. Yeah, stand by. The other candidate for selectman is Tim Gowan. I don't know him, but please come up.
People don't know me.
Okay, well, that's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
Here, you'll take that. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. My name's Tim Galvin. I live at the end of Lamprey Lane. I've been here 16 years and have purposely kept kind of a low profile. So it's really not surprising that most people don't know who I am. My background is a little eclectic. I've worked both public sector, private sector. I'm a policy guy. I'm a compliance guy. And the reason that I decided to do this year, to run for selectman, is over the last couple of years, I've become concerned that there's a lot of stuff, important stuff, falling through the cracks. I'm concerned that there's a better way, a more efficient way that town government can be executed so that it's both more transparent and more accessible for everybody. Chip is right. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. But it's never simple, and it's never not complicated. But as I said, I decided to do this because my background is such that there's a lot that I have to lend to improving efficiencies and compliance that'll be better for everybody. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I'll try to keep it short. Reacting to something that Chip said, one of those efficiency things that he and I guess will differ on, the question of a town administrator. I happen to think it's a good idea. My understanding and the way I look at the Board of Selectmen is to drive policy and to take care of the prudential affairs of the town, the general business of the town. But we're not a small little town anymore, even though we're still a small town. Our budget is not small anymore. As everybody knows, there's a number of people moving in on a regular basis. There's more development taking place. And so by the nature of all of those things, you just can't cover everything as a board as well as you can if there's somebody who's responsible on a day-to-day basis for the operational atmosphere of the town.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now maybe someone will have a question which we can pose to both the candidates. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's John Ratcliffe. I live up on Mountain Road. Some of you know me, some of you don't. So I got a twofold question here. Part of it was actually going to ask Mr. Galvin.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, you start with Tim, and then we'll ask Chip the same question.
So, twofold question. A lot of us moved here for the peace, quiet, enjoyment. Some of us took a look at the town ordinances and such before we moved here to make sure we were moving to the right place. So my question is, first of all, do we want to enforce our town ordinances fairly and impartially, all of them? And if not, which ordinances should be removed? And the second part of this is, for the people, we just talked about the future of the town. How do you see the town's future moving? Are we going to be a residential, peaceful community? Do we want to keep the town as it is? Or do we want to progress to something else? Are we looking to create some type of a higher impact type of a town?
Tim, since he posed that question to initially, let's do that, and then I'll ask Chip to also respond.
So the first part of the answer is a qualified yes, and by qualified I mean so long as the ordinance is not flawed, and they should all be enforced in terms of their structure and their purpose. The second part of your question, I think I'll use the master plan that was just redone as the basis for the question. The master plan, in my reading of it, or at least the reports of it, made it pretty clear that the majority of the population wants to keep what we have pretty much the same as it is, with some areas of development for various residential and commercial enterprises. So to get there using that plan with the various boards and committees that contribute to what that's going to look like in terms of decisions that the selectmen may have to make for the benefit of the town moving forward. That's what I'd rely on. Does that answer your question?
I think so. The only question I would have for you is, have you looked over the town ordinances? Are there any ordinances in there that you don't think we should have?
There are none that I don't think we should have. There are some that I think need to be revised. And I'll go even further because I think I know the situation around your home. My read of that particular zoning ordinance would be that it's unenforceable because it's too ambiguous. It needs to be redrafted and restructured. And having spent some time running zoning boards for other municipalities in the state, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what it would take to structure the ordinance or restructure the ordinance so that it can be enforced fairly and equally across the board.
Of course, the ordinance is actually copied from the state. That particular ordinance. Almost all of them are.
Got it?
That should respond to the same question.
Be nice if you were standing next to each other.
I'm sorry.
That was
You want
why
me to
there are two
move?
chairs here. Yours and his.
Come over here.
This is more fun. Look at all the extras.
Yeah, the seat was
You look like
moving.
you're in a corner.
Hey, I turned 40 recently.
Really?
So,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a loaded question. We've had a number of meetings on this issue. We have consulted with our attorney a few times, actually multiple times, about that ordinance question, the result of which Mr. Ratcliffe disagrees with. But one thing he doesn't consider, I think,
As do 35 other people that signed a petition.
you asked the question, sir. Okay, the other thing that you're not considering in that dynamic is this is not a board of one. We don't have an autocracy here in Tuftonboro. It's a board of three. If two members decide they're going to vote negative, then the third member is irrelevant. So an agreement between the selectmen has to be made how to enforce different ordinances if they need enforcement. And getting that agreement is sometimes a bit of a struggle. That said, we haven't ended the discussion about that issue up on 171. So we'll move forward with that. But one selectman is not going to make a difference in the decision that was made recently on that case.
is there any more comment that you can offer in a more general manner? Because I don't want to have a debate about a particular ordinance, and as nobody else understands what really he's talking about, and to be fair. So, John, to your question, do you feel that your inquiry was adequately addressed? The substance of the question.
I think I'm also looking at a general idea of how people feel about this town. I moved here 20 years ago. When we first moved here, the first thing we had was a junkyard being built next to my home. Mm-hmm. The town has a very clear anti-junkyard RSA. Mr. Albee was not on the board at that time, but at that time, the same exact thing happened where I was told a man can do whatever he wants on his own property, regardless of what your neighbors, how they were being affected.
So it's a question of general enforcement of
if I may continue,
ordinances.
You asked 75 motor vehicles were pulled off that property. That is a junkyard.
But it was ultimately...
By the state. The town refused to act.
That's not true at all.
The town refused to act.
That's not true at all.
I called the state police and the state police had the vehicles removed.
I guess we don't want to have a one-on-one conversation about cleaning up that particular junkyard, but that wasn't the only one. I went to that. I was in office during the time when that was being cleaned up. There was another ancillary junkyard up by Beach Pond that we did at the same time. We've done any number of cleanups on that. if we get into general terms about ordinances, however, you have to look at, one, the master plan, but also the planning board, also the voters. If you want to bring a vote to the town with different language, bring it. We're entertaining a petition warrant article this year on an issue that none of the selectmen and none of the budget committee are interested in having, but it's still going to be there at town meeting. So if you have the signatures and you think you have the movement, bring it forward to town meeting.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I was just curious, what Mr. Galvin thinks is going through the cracks.
Okay. Tim?
So things like.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yep. Well, let me back up. This year I sat through a majority of the budget committee process, and it was truly an enlightening experience. As a result of that, some of the things that I think are falling through that could be falling through the cracks are personnel matters, policy rewrites, my perception of what is potentially a lack of communication, transparency with availability and access to information that should be easily accessible, but for some reason is not always accessible or readily available. I have been studying, for example, the situation with the test pits at the dump, because somebody had made a comment to me. And so I did a little research, and when I spoke to folks on the CIP, and I spoke to folks with the Conservation Commission, because it has a tie-in to the Great Meadow and the watershed, and one of the things I learned at the Budget Committee meetings was that that is a very large aquifer, one of the most significant aquifers in the region. But there seems to be no conversation between the selectmen and those two groups, conservation and CIP, as it pertains to the chemicals that are leaching out of those pits that, based on my observations in the maps, are going into the wetlands, which means those chemicals are also potentially going into the aquifer areas, and nobody is testing. And when the question has been posed as to what's happening, the pat answer seems to be, well, we're monitoring it. Now, I don't know whether the selectmen, when the last time they reviewed the last April testing results that were done by the testing company that the town hires, but PFAS exceeds the DES standards, and something called 1,4-dioxone also exceeds the state standards. My reading of, and I'm not a chemist, my reading of 1,4-dioxone is it's an EPA-listed carcinogen. So if this garbage is leaching out of the dump into the wetlands, it stands to reason that it's potentially going into the aquifer. And so when I say things are falling through the cracks, these are the kinds of things that I am legitimately concerned are falling through the cracks.
Thank you for being specific.
Thank you. I want to avoid, I guess, like a he said, she said thing here. I
just want to clear it up. I mean, the test wells that are surrounding the landfill are being tested more than once a year. They're monitored by a professional company. We do review the studies, and DES reviews the studies. If what you say were true, we would have the Department of Environmental Security here every day. It isn't true. There may be some site problems with what the seep looked like at one point in time, but the chemicals that are coming out of the landfill are monitored constantly. And we have yet to have any injunction put on us by DES or any remedial action demanded by DES or any notification from our testing company that there's a problem with our landfill. PFAF is just entering the lexicon of testing, so we are getting that result as well. So the select board has to keep an eye on all of those things as it goes forward, but it's not something that we publish. We have it at our open meeting. All of you are invited to our weekly meetings. We talk about all kinds of different things. One of them is the landfill. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, Guy.
I would just like to thank Chip for expressing his confidence in myself and the other selectmen.
I didn't hear him say that.
That's all I had to say.
Good questions? Yes.
I'd like to ask the candidates their view on the petition warrant article that's asking Tuftonboro voters to approve a contribution to an already existing project in Wolfboro, the newly built ice arena.
Thanks. Seems I'm right here. You want to answer first?
You want me first? Okay, we received a petition warrant article. All the signatures were checked. It's going to be on the warrant at town meeting. However, we did have a public meeting.
You want to explain what a petition warrant is, because that's not widely known.
Okay.
Also.
If the selectmen decide they're not going to put a warrant article on for some purpose, the legislative body, which is you, have the option of gathering signatures and presenting a warrant article for a purpose that you think is important, and the selectmen or the budget committee haven't put on the warrant. It has to go on the warrant at that point in time. But prior to going on the warrant, it gets voted on by the selectmen and it gets voted on by the budget committee. So there's some recommendation one way or the other from those two boards. But all of the citizens will get an opportunity to vote on the petition warrant article. It'll be on, I think it's Article 14. But we had a public hearing at the townhouse back in November, I believe it was. And the representatives from Wolfboro came. They're asking for $250,000 to put towards the ice arena down in Wolfboro. And we'll go over it at town meeting, but at no point in time was there any quid pro quo. So we pay $16,000 a year to Wolfboro to participate in their Parks and Rec programs. There was not going to be any waiver of that. We don't get to park at the beaches in Wolfboro, even though...
Oh, you can.
No, we can't.
You can park.
We can,
Oh, that's right, you can't park, but you can go. You can walk.
You can walk, right.
You can walk the trail.
I can walk to the beach that's named after my family. It's wonderful. But along with that, there were some bookkeeping issues, and we found out that not only are they asking Tuftonboro for $250,000, they're asking Kingswood for $250,000, they're asking Ospey for $250,000, Brookfield for $250,000, and it's just adding up to a lot of money. But if you add the $250,000 that Kingswood may give, that adds an additional burden of $37,000 to our taxes, because that's our portion of the school budget. So now we're talking about $287,000 because we had to pay that additional school tax and have no participation in the management, no participation in the decision-making process. The project did not go out for bid, so I'm concerned from the standpoint of a selectman whether or not we can cut a check to Wolfboro because they violated our procurement policies and we're giving money to another town. So there are a lot of issues at hand, and you'll all hear about it again at town meeting.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Tim?
So I don't have all the numbers like Chip does, but what I have heard, and I don't mean to put my back to you folks. From what I have heard, I don't see that we're getting any return on the investment, so I'm not for it. I think we can find a lot better ways to spend $250,000.
Okay, thanks. Yes, Max.
And Chip didn't really answer the question, sort of, but he voted against it, so he's not in favor of it either.
Well, he voted against it as the current selectman, so yeah, that's.
He didn't really say that, though.
That will all come out of town meeting. All of our votes are.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
clarifying.
Are there any other? Yes, ma'am.
So take this off so you can hear me. I'm Jill Cromwell from Melvin Village. I would like to ask both of you to give us some more information about your backgrounds, especially Tim, since he is relatively unknown. Specifically, what work history you have, and Chip also, I know his political history, but I don't know his background and how I think that helps voters decide what you bring to help the town run properly. Thank you.
Okay, who do you want first?
It doesn't matter.
I'm here, so I'll do it this way.
Where to start? So my background spans a lot of territory. I started out in law enforcement in '86 in Massachusetts. I went to South Carolina expressly to start and build a tactical mounted unit for a PD outside of Columbia. I wrote the first, and to my knowledge, still the only certified training program for tactical mounted operations in the state. I left South Carolina in '98, '99, moved back to New Hampshire, lived in Ware, was involved with the zoning board in Ware for about 10 years, 9 of which I chaired it. I was on the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission for about 6 years. I took a job with a management consulting firm and ran 7 offices through New England and Western New York, and then took, as a dual role, was the for how many were we? Were 14 offices in 7 states. So I was redoing the curriculum for service delivery for all of the advising staff in the entire company. In 2003, I went to work in Rochester for a manufacturing company. Took over the HR duties, the compliance duties, was vice president of operations in HR. 7 years ago, 7 years. 7 years ago, I left that company and went into business for myself, doing business management consulting, real estate consulting, and patient advocacy. So I've sort of taken a hiatus for a while from politics and political activity. The last 2 things that I did at the state level, I took an appointment from Governor Lynch and from Governor Hassan and chaired the Job Training Fund for 10 years. And in that same period of time took an appointment to the executive board for workforce development for the state. And now I'm here.
Elementary school.
Did I go down?
You don't need to know where you went.
Oh, all right. Well, that's all I have. All right, I guess it's hard to know where to begin. I started washing dishes at the age of 9 at my grandfather's resort for 450 visitors, 3 meals a day, 72 hours a week for $35. But I progressed from there, thankfully. Every major job I've had since the 70s, my capital's been at risk. I've had employees. My wife and I, or mostly me, but my wife and I built our house up on Ledge Hill Road in '74. We've lived there ever since. I just put an addition on to Max's chagrin, but he'll get over it. I cleared the fields, I dug the ponds, all the while running a trucking company until the ICC got put out of business, and that put me out of business. At which point I went into the car business. I stayed in that for 22 years, I think it was. We had 40 employees, average sales probably in the $35 million a year range. I served as a county commissioner, as I mentioned. That's a $30 million budget there with 300 plus employees. Also been the selectman here. And in between, I served as a board of trustee member, as a treasurer of a board of trustees of a private school. I guess there's all kinds of other things I've been doing, but for Jill's sake, I think that's probably the most monetary business that I've been in. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
My name's Ed Marodzinski. I live on Ledge Hill Road. And recently there was a questionnaire sent out to the town. And I'd like some feedback on your position on that, on why it was sent out, how it was sent out, and where that stands.
You're referring to the Parks and Rec?
Yes.
Questionnaire?
The questionnaire regarding the Parks and Recreation.
So, who wants to take first shot at that?
All right. That, and I don't think Tim knows anything about this, but we had a group of people come to the selectman's office wanting to do I think it was a for-profit pickleball operation. They were looking for land, and they brought in our Parks and Rec director as well, who I have to say has done an exemplary job with that department of increasing the activity, bringing in new things. I mean, we've got ballroom dancing for those people who can actually dance. But the concerts at the beach and any number of different activities that Dennis has brought to the town, which I think is great. He's currently working on a mountain bike trail through grant funding behind the fire station. But back to your question, he brought those folks in, and we have no inherent knowledge about pickleball, it seems, the three selectmen, or its benefit or need at the community level. So we told them probably the best way to approach this was to get some feedback, and the easiest way to get feedback during the course of the year is to work with the Tuftonboro Association and the Tuftonboro Times, and that's where that questionnaire came out. And I believe they've found a different location, if that helps. I hope it helps.
So, Chip is right. At first, I really didn't. I haven't seen the questionnaire, so I really can't speak to how or why. But what I do know, I think it's the same group. This started in Wolfboro because somebody had created a trust fund, or was willing to create a trust fund, and the town of Wolfboro shot. They were going to, this group in Wolfboro had put together some money and wanted to do it, I guess, originally on the corner there across from the Wilder supermarket. And The only reason that I know that is because I used to sit on the board for the tennis club in Wolfboro, and there was some confusion with the Wolfboro Selectmen's meeting because they said the tennis club was supporting this thing and we knew nothing about it. And so evidently after Wolfboro said no, they came to Tuftonboro to see what they could do. So other than that, I don't know what happened or what transpired, and I've not yet seen a survey.
There are some extra issues of the Tuftonboro Times in that box. Why don't you give him one, because they have the survey.
The survey's in there.
In the Tuftonboro Times.
I'm afraid that doesn't satisfy the question, but I don't know that there is an answer.
There is?
I said I don't think that there is an answer right now. Maybe it's we're waiting for the Parks and Recs guys to say what the result of their survey was.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, that resounding silence. Oh, Joe.
I have another one. Thank you. I noticed that there will be a warrant article to somehow revise our previous vote on the police new building, to build it somewhat smaller, maybe a quarter or so smaller than what was planned because of the inflationary costs. So if that goes ahead and is voted positively, I assume that means we will start building the new police station. So my question is, are you in support of ensuring that it has the potential to be added onto to make it the size that the studies all said we needed originally, but we can't afford right now? And if you are in favor of that, what time frame do you envision it being before that addition to the police station would be built?
So if I could summarize, if that warrant is passed, which results in a smaller building, the essence of your question is, do you want it to be bigger later, and if so, when?
Correct.
Okay.
So, my understanding of the article is really, and Chip, correct me if I get this wrong, but the way the article is written is to get permission from the town to build a facility that will be slightly smaller than what was originally planned, and be able to spend the money that the town already has by way of the grant, so that they don't lose the grant. So I would be in favor of doing that. It slims it down a little bit. In terms of your question about how soon could we expand on it, I wouldn't hazard that guess right now because I don't have any data. It would depend, I suppose, on how much does the town grow? How much does the police department grow? What are the revenues available to do it? Are people willing to put out the extra tax burden to be able to do it? And it comes down to really, it doesn't become a necessity in my view. Sort of to Dave's point earlier, needs versus it would be kind of nice to have. And at this point, I don't know that it would really be a needed nice to have.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'll answer all of your points. First of all, the design that we're having created it has a element to it that will allow for expansion. So that's in the design process currently. I think it's done, actually. The reason it's on the ballot, first and foremost, the reason is that we've secured a $347,000 grant from the USDA, and we had a Zoom meeting with those folks and a couple other meetings. And our concern was that if we reduce the size of the building, will we lose that grant? At which point we're not going to go far. And they said, no, you can still have the grant, but we need an affirmative vote from your legislative body, from your townspeople, that they will accept building a smaller building. And I think inherent in the vote last year not to give us additional funding for the building, a part of that was that I think a certain portion of the community wanted us to look at a smaller facility. So we're handling that this way. It doesn't, we have the money in trust currently. We have the grant secured if we get the vote positively at town meeting. So there will be no additional tax impact. You've already paid the taxes on the money that we have.
Is it not true that another part of that dynamic is we're getting a smaller building for the same dollars that we already authorized for a bigger building a couple years ago?
Right.
So just to make that point clear too.
You didn't answer my last part.
Oh, what was it? I'm sorry, I missed the last one.
What? When do you foresee it needing to be added on to?
Okay, we're going to be prepared once the facility's built to add on the next day if you want to. But the problem that we have, or the issue that's in front of us, is that we don't have the political will in the community to have that bigger building. You know, so if the community wanted the bigger building, they would have given us the additional capital last year at town meeting. So obviously, we'll bring it up again. I don't know if it'll come up again while I'm still a selectman, but it'll come up again. And the ability to add on will be accommodated for in this initial building. But it's really, we have to see a public will to need that larger space.
Okay. Does anyone else have another question? Well, I appreciate your cooperation this evening. It's 8:15, and I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for coming. By the way, don't forget, 14th of March is town election, and the 15th is town meeting.